we have to keep our heads and wits about us, but we also have to know what's coming. Possibly British jihadists have now claimed that after they win the war in Syria, they will aim their focus on the West, Britain and the U.S. in particular. That sounds like a prediction we made, I don't know, years ago. Here to discuss this and other recent developments in the Middle East is Buck Sexton, the national security correspondent for The Blaze. Buck, I'm really concerned with the president's poll numbers dropping, with everything that we have got going on in the world, and I'm not saying that it would be coordinated or anything else like that. What I'm saying is war works to people's advantage. And we have not protected our homeland. We have not protected our country. We don't know who's even in here. And now the Syrian rebels say they're going to target us. How real is this?
Well, Glenn, it's very real if you look at the history of jihadist movements like this in the past. You mentioned that these specific British jihadists, the ones that are on this video, which is on The Blaze, and folks can see it, I would advise them to take a look at it, because in the past, when we have ignored the proclamations of avowed jihadists, they've made good on them at some point in the future. And a lot of people say, how could we have seen this coming? Well, they told us. And in this case, you have British jihadis. This is now individuals who can travel freely around the EU and can probably travel easily into the United States as well, saying they'll bring the war to us. After they defeat Assad, perhaps, but Glenn, they don't have to win that war. In fact, it seems increasingly likely that what you'll have is a sort of continued violent stasis where the jihadists are in one part of the country, Assad has control in the other. They just need a base of operations, an AO, if you will. They need a little emirate, de facto emirate, inside of Syria that possibly sprawls across the border into Iraq, from which they can launch attacks.
How
just
real
like
is that?
A little country known as Afghanistan.
How real is that to happen? How likely is that to happen?
I think it's pretty likely. I mean, you can never really tell which unit, which cell will go operational first. There are others as well. We know Yemen is very active. There are other elements of al-Qaeda around the world that could beat them to the punch. But if you're looking at a place where you have a real global clarion call to jihad, Syria is number one right now. That's the big show. That's the big game for guys who want to get their jihad on. Now, once they've established themselves, Glenn, this is part of the radicalization cycle. This is something I studied at the NYPD Intelligence Division as well as at the CIA. Once they've gone to the point where they've engaged in violence, their ideology has been solidified by those around them, when they either return home or if they decide to stay, the next step is not focusing on Assad. He's just a little puppet. He's a little nobody. It's the big dogs. Yeah. It's the U.S. and it's Israel.
I mean, last week, I don't know if you saw it, Buck, but on For the Record, we talked about all of the guys who are leaving for jihad in Syria from Minnesota. And nobody's paying attention to this. I mean, we've been ringing this bell for a while. Minnesota is in trouble, and it's a hotbed. How are we tracking these people when they leave? We don't catch them when they leave. Are we catching them when they come back at all? Do you have any idea if we... Go ahead.
Look, they can do bolos. They can put a be on the lookout for. And so when they try to enter back into this country, you can debrief them. But keep in mind, and people need to understand this, that just because somebody travels to, say, Turkey or Jordan, then crosses the border into Syria, it's unlikely, unless they're really not bright, that they're going to come back and say, yeah, I was just part of Jabhat al-Nusra. I was engaging in jihad against Assad, the Alawite scum, and the Christians that he's protecting. They're probably going to come back and say, I was just visiting family. So unless the FBI or unless the authorities here, Homeland Security, can prove that these jihadists actually did something over there, now you have trained, hardened jihadists filtering back into the United States and into Europe as well. And Glenn, if they're unsuccessful against Assad, in some sense that actually ups their willingness, their desire perhaps, to strike at the West, to make a bigger point, to make the jihad about more than just Assad. That's certainly what happened after the Soviets left Afghanistan. It's not like they said, oh, we had victory, now we're done. No, there's always more. The Dar al-Harb, the land of war. That's what they think the rest of us are.
So real quick, because I have less than a minute now, give me what you think. I said in 2006 with Benjamin Netanyahu, it's going to come a time the world's going to be on the verge of peace. America will say we're on the verge of peace, and we could have had a deal with Iran, and we will pass, the world will pass. As it turns out, I was wrong on one thing. France would actually stand up, but the world is now passed on this. They want to make peace, but Israel is going to have to do something and handle this on their own. What happens from here? Do they strike Iran?
I think that this ends with, I've always thought this, Glenn, unfortunately, I think this ends with Iran having a nuclear weapon and the world having to deal with that. Perhaps the Saudis deciding they're going to go forth with the recent reports about...
Israel does not strike Iran, you don't think? I think they do. You don't?
I don't see it happening. I've thought that if it was going to happen, it would have happened years ago. The Iranians know exactly what they're doing right now. They are going to run out the clock. Everything else is just a smokescreen. It's an obfuscation. And let's play
devil's advocate. I know I've got to wrap. Devil's advocate. Is there any reason why the president and our State Department would have taken this stance on this deal, other than they're just in the wrong camp? Can you think of any other reason?
I think they're naive. I think that they have a lot of hubris. I think that they actually believe in the power of their diplomacy, of Obama's speeches to make the world a better place, despite all the evidence to the contrary of the past 5 years. They are that delusional and therefore that scary.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.